So my talk here is to kind of mention the difference between how the advocacy work is done at the international level, or maybe you can take the United States as an example, or Canada, and then take it down to where I come from, in Kiribati. But before I go on to that, I think it is always very important for me to say that for us coming from the Pacific Islands, we have a lot to be proud of in terms of our culture, our language, and all kinds of things. And if I speak particularly about my island of Kiribati, that it was the place that first celebrated the millennium, or the first place to see the sunrise in 2000. I think that's something that it's unique about the nation that I come from. But then if we look at the other side of the story, it's also sad that it may be the first place to go underwater. But we're trying to be very hopeful here. And the thing that we're trying to do to address the issue, it has been very, very difficult for us. Coming from the Pacific Island communities, more than 50% of the people in the Pacific and these islands there that are not educated. I mean, they don't go to school, but they're educated about their own traditional knowledge. And they live over the natural resources. That they go fishing, or they do plantations on the land. And I think that's something that's very, very important part of our culture as well. With climate change, this has a lot of impact on these natural resources in terms of coral bleaching or ocean acidification that is causing the reef to die, and sea level rise. The coastal erosions that we're seeing today is really a problem. It's really totally devastates the local communities. And I think that's something that we find it very difficult, and it makes us so vulnerable to climate change, because our very existence relies heavily on the natural resources. And given that we are the people who are lacking the human financial resources to address the issue, plus we also have limited space to move around. Okay, when our president of Kiribati gave a speech at one of the international meetings, and there was a group that said, "Why don't you move further inland?" And the president said, "The more we move further inland, we'll find ourselves falling on the other side of the ocean." Okay, and that's the problem, because we have limited spaces also. A place which is only 2 to 3 meters above sea level is a very vulnerable state to the impacts of climate change. I have to cut it short in terms of the impacts and how the people are facing the impacts of climate change. But in terms of advocacy, and I think I have to report on how we do this. Well, in 2009, I think it was the Maldives that hosted the most vulnerable country summit. And then Kiribati got the idea from that meeting, and they decided to host another vulnerable country summit in Kiribati in 2010. When the people of the Pacific heard about this summit, and the people of Kiribati heard about it too, they were so excited. Because here, we look at the meeting indoor, you hardly see many Pacific Islanders. I would say maybe only 4 or 5 CSOs, civil society reps, that are here indoor, that are walking around with yellow patches. And that's because it's not easy for us to travel to these meetings to voice our concerns at these international meetings. So what we did, Kiribati hosted this vulnerable country summit, and we made use of it. And our neighboring islands, the Pacific Islands, some of them, they managed to fly over to Kiribati just to lobby the delegates that arrived from Brazil, from the BASIC, from the developed countries. A number of them came to Kiribati for that summit, and it was a very important opportunity for us to make use of. And at that time, I was working with WWF, and I was glad because I managed to get the amount of like $2,000 US just for us to use to bring together the CSOs that came from around the Pacific and the group of CSOs in Kiribati to do the rallying outside that venue to voice our concerns as civil society people. And I think for us that was a very important opportunity for us, that we get to say something and show our banners saying like 350 to stay alive, or at least 1.5 is good for us, or 2 degrees Celsius is too high for us. Those kind of things written on the band and the posters. And we find that very useful for us, and I think it was an opportunity. And even though the water is still slowly encroaching the islands, we still hope that we will still be around in the next 200 years and continue to work with the climate action network and the rest of Europe and the whole world, because this is it's a global problem, and therefore it is a global solution. Thank you very much.